Happy New Year. My name's Tim Held, and this is Podular Modcast. I'm very excited to kick off 2024 with this week's guest, Benn Jordan. You may know Ben as the Flashbulb, or you may know Ben from his YouTube channel, likely both. But if you aren't aware of his YouTube channel and you are into keeping up on what's going on in the world of synths, in the world of music production, in the world of streaming platforms and all that, he is an excellent resource. And it was really awesome to have a chance to just sit down and yap away. So we're going to get into that talk very soon. But first up, I just want to say thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. I'm going to be sending out stuff for that giveaway probably by the end of next week. Cassette tapes, blank panels, patch cables, maybe a module. I'm still working on that. Bunch of stickers. And how I determine who gets what is I'm just going to post on the Patreon page a picture of all the stuff in a couple different categories, and first come first serve to say I want that. I'm just gonna say, all right, give me your address and I'm gonna send it to you. So if you want to sign up, head over to patreon.com/Podular Modcast. And while we're on the topic of Patreon, I want to just talk about it and be transparent about what's going on over there. And just say something that's bothered me for a very long time is how bad I think I am at running a Patreon page. So I want to first off say, I'm sorry if you signed up and maybe some of the perks that, were the incentive that got you to sign up didn't last long or, haven't been consistent. I'm truly sorry for that. But to be honest, I don't know how to juggle all of the stuff that it takes to do a podcast. The ultimate goal with the Patreon is obviously to fund all of the costs of making it, including my time, which on average is about 30 hours a week, I would say, for an hour episode. But above that, I was hoping to one day get to a point where I could pay myself and then have enough to pay an assistant producer or something, because there's just so much that goes into making a podcast, and none of it is particularly hard or super time consuming. It's just a bunch of little things that are just exploded everywhere, and maintaining a Patreon is one of those. This is not an excuse, though. I definitely feel like I could have just done better with it. So I'm gonna make a pledge to y'all this year that I have one really cool idea, I think, for a Patreon perk that I'm going to start doing, and it's going to be consistent. So hopefully once a month, but at least every 2 months, depending on the level of interest in this, I want to actually do the idea that I've talked about. Well, I talked about it a long time ago, the album club idea. And the idea of the album club is if you are a patron and you have an album that you are close to finishing or have just finished, you can submit it to me, and then we can pick a couple albums for each session to listen to separately before we have the meeting, and then we can all meet up on Zoom with the artists and other patrons and just kind of have a nice roundtable about the album. And then I would record those and release those as videos or audio kind of bonus podcasts for the patrons. So if you didn't make it to one of the album clubs, you could at least, listen back to it. And then I was thinking it would be really cool to maybe at the end of every year release a compilation of tracks from all the different artists who submitted to the album club. So I think that sounds pretty cool. But yeah, just full transparency, the highest point I ever got on Patreon was $500 a month, which is amazing. It's pretty cool to get $500 a month from people who are just I'm into what you do, keep doing it. That has dropped down to $300, and it's actually been dropping consistently for the last year and a half. And I noticed it when the economy started kind of taking a hit. The economy taking a hit makes the synth economy take a hit, which affects, synth podcasts. But I also think it has been just how poorly I've been doing it. So I say it at the beginning of every year, but it's always a little vague, but let's grow the Patreon. So to be clear and not vague about it, there's no way I can pay myself to do this off of $300 a month, let alone pay somebody else. But if we can get to the point where I can cover the cost of the podcast, pay myself for my work, and then hire somebody, I would be so excited to bring somebody on as an assistant producer, to even create their own segments. I feel like I can't cover all of the stuff that's going on in the synth world, so it might be cool to have another host of a sort just to give us weekly segments on whatever they think is interesting or something. Because I want the show to grow, you know. It's 6 years old. I want it to, you know, evolve over time and become what we all want it to be as a community here. So yeah, my pledge going forward is to be better at Patreon and come up with interactive and community building incentives for people to sign up. So once again, that's patreon.com/podularmodcast. Okay, that big rant is out of the way. I want to say thank you to After Later Audio, For a Mess, Patchworks, and Novation for their continued support of Podular Modcast. Links to all of their great stuff in the show description. Let's get into our chat with Ben. And we're rolling with Benn Jordan. How are you today?
I am excellent. How are you?
I think I'm excellent. So far, so good.
I feel like you asked me how I was 30 seconds ago before hitting record, and I said, I'm all right.
Yeah.
And then I'm somehow like knowing that I'm speaking to the world. I'm like, I'm excellent. I'm great.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I asked you how you were doing, it immediately fired off in my head. Like, I just asked him this question, but
well, yeah, keep you on your feet. I'll just
keep
giving you a different answer.
So, you know, we play in similar realms, but you've got a huge audience on YouTube. And because I do, you know, I talk about synths with people a couple times a week, and I make my own demos, and then I make my own music. I actually don't ingest too much other synthfluencer content, you know? So you popped, I think it was the why I'm ending, or why I'm not going to do review videos anymore, that popped up in my feed. And it's something I've been thinking all morning, how I want to like formulate these kind of nebulous thoughts that I've been having lately into questions. So hopefully that will happen. But what I'm trying to get at is, you know, after watching that, I started going through a bunch of your other videos, and I really, really appreciate the how like transparent you are, and how you kind of pull the curtain back for people who don't do this stuff, and give them an insight into how it all works, and the slimy side of it, the side of it that everybody assumes and isn't necessarily true, and all that. And I really appreciate that, because as somebody who, for better or worse, is in some form a synthfluencer, which I hate that term, or content creator. You know, it's interesting to me. So I wanted to definitely get into that stuff, but and I know you've shared this in the past, but just for anybody out there listening who's not familiar with you, can you just kind of give us, I always like to ask, like, when did it start, this I mean, I feel like it's a compulsion sometimes. Like, when did music compel you? When did you know that was the thing, and what was it?
I feel like the classic answer that I always had to that. Now I'm hearing my voice, and I'm like, you know what? There we go. Now I got a little bit more bass. I sound like Venus Theory. Okay. I when I started music, I mean, I was like younger than I recall. I think I was like 5 years old, and I just went to a state fair and saw a guitar and wanted it more than anything, and threw a fit, and then my grandpa bought it for me. And then that guitar, and now I realize, now that I'm much older, and now that I've kind of like, you know, years of therapy and everything else, like that guitar escape pod from everything negative about life. that guitar was like my best friend. It got me through everything. I was never real,
Hmm.
I didn't get lessons or anything. And so when I was done with my home things a kid has to do, then I would, be able to play the guitar. And if I would like play the guitar very quietly,
Hmm.
and so uh, that just got me addicted. And that just like
Yeah,
made me care more about being creative and expressing myself in whatever way I can find than anything else. And that inspired me to keep practicing, and to keep doing it. And so I'm really lucky in a weird way to have that odd experience because I'm sure it would have been way different had they been like, you're going to guitar lessons once a week or
absolutely.
piano
Yeah.
lessons or anything. So, yeah.
I have a kind of a similar thing. Where did you grow up before I?
South Chicago, like West Englewood, Chicago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a really small town here in Washington State. My graduating class was 84 kids, and
Okay.
60% of us went from K through 12 together. So it was,
Oh,
not a
nice.
lot going on in that town. And my mom had an acoustic guitar, my whole life, but she didn't play it. It was hers when she was a kid. And yeah, I had an uncle who every time he'd come over, everybody begged him to play and sing because he's a really talented
Yeah.
musician. And I that got in my bones early, and I totally identify with that escape pod thing. Especially before getting a license. Just there's nothing to do in these small towns, so I just plinked
Yeah.
on guitar, and it really was kind of an escape. And it became, for better or worse, my identity very early on.
Yeah. And, it's also music. I think one of the things a lot of people don't think about, and probably one of the reasons why music is so popular in general among people, the reason we listen to things on purpose that otherwise
Hmm.
would sound like noise. Um, music is like when we think about the English language, everything has to get quantified. I guess like if podular modcast, so you would then think that we run it through a quantizer, like an English
Right.
quantizer, where we split things into semitones, but
Yeah.
into words, and it's like, oh, I feel sad, oh, I
Yeah.
feel happy, I feel depressed, I'm in love. What do these things even mean? Like it's so
Hmm.
hard to connect them to how we actually feel, or at least for me. And music, like, gives you freedom from that, and it's like when if you just put a baby in front of a piano, they'll be able to tell you if they're excited or not.
Hmm.
That's like
Yeah.
the 2
Hmm.
emotions that they could tell you. They could either bang on the thing or they could just, like, not pay attention to it, and then eventually, a couple years later, they'll be able to tell you if they're happy or sad. It'll be major or
Right.
minor chords or, the standard way. And then if they keep playing and they become, a Berkeley PhD jazz pianist, they'll be able to describe Las Vegas to you and the experience they had with the sun setting right after their parent died.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
you won't necessarily get that from it, but like you'll get how they feel, which is so much more important than the actual events when you think about, just the time of your
Totally
life.
agree. Yeah. And this is something that I've put a lot of thought into, especially as I'm getting older. I'm going to be 40 in a couple months. And, um, like I said, it becomes your identity. And then, as you go older, you just start to, question things and, test the tensile strength of certain, ideas you have about yourself or whatever. And, obviously self-expression, that's like, everybody knows that's art, is, it's a way of saying these things that can't be said and whatnot. And I'm starting to realize with, I got a really late in life diagnosis of ADHD. It's only been a couple years.
Mm,
Before that, I was diagnosed dyslexic in third grade, but that never felt right. And as I've gotten older, I, just that doesn't feel like that what this is. Um, and so a lot of things are locking into place. One of which is how I have this incessant drive to try to make sure that I am perfectly clear and I want to be perfectly understood. And that
mm,
actually wings me, and it makes me to where I ramble and I'm
sure.
not all that clearly understood. And it's making more and more sense of why I feel like my most maybe the most fluent language I have of emotional expression is music. So yeah,
Right.
I like that way that you put it.
I mean, it's just so important to know if you're a musician too. It's so important to know that you have a gift. Like if you're into music, whether you're good or not at, whether you consider yourself skilled or not, y- the fact that you have this gift to where you can develop that language and to where you could express it just to yourself, like that's
Hmm.
more important than any therapist. You know, nothing wrong with therapy, but that it's
Right.
way more. Yeah, and then to flip that on the other end, and people be like, "Well, with Spotify paying so low and with AI music generators coming out, I don't even wanna make music anymore." And it's like, "Are you out of your mind?" Like,
Yeah.
I'm not making music for Spotify money. I'm not making
Totally.
music make okay, have AI make music. I don't care. Like, I'm still gonna do it because I love it. It's my
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. The AI making music thing has like that just is, that's not like something that scares me or concerns me at all because I feel like with stuff like that, we like humans have a lot of good and bad characteristics, but I think for better or worse, we're extremely innovative, especially when there are like specific limitations or specific parameters that we're, made to work within. So I feel like, AI generated music, like if that becomes something that people are like ingesting in the way that they're ingesting TikTok videos and Spotify and the way people used to listen to the radio, that's going to be
Yeah.
for the non-seekers, and that's not a value judgment. It's just a different type of person, and those who are seekers are they're going to find ways to do it outside of that to make sure that it is in it's I feel like something like have you seen that show Station 11?
Oh, I watched, like, a couple episodes, and then
Okay.
it's not that I thought it was bad, it was just,
Yeah,
whatever
no.
happened, I didn't have time to watch anymore, but yeah.
Right. So it's a post-apocalyptic thing, and a traveling uh,
Mm,
acting troupe just doing plays
yeah,
in these little villages. So I mean, I feel like the the level of connection, that connection that's being severed between from person to person with a lot of art in this digital AI, massive corporation world, like I feel like that's just going to create opportunities for people to find a not a new way, but almost go back in time in a way to where it might be more personal. You're not playing the same stadium as the Golden State Warriors, but maybe you're playing a living room show or, something like that, that could be a whole lot more
right.
meaningful. And this kind of brings up something that I definitely wanted to just kind of pick your brain about and hear you riff on, but like just the nature of the world, but especially our society that we live in being so, it's just where it's the capitalism is the foundation of everyday life,
Yeah.
and how that is just so antithetical to artistic expression in so many ways, not in all ways, but in so many ways. Um, yeah, that's just something that's been on my mind a lot, especially one of the reasons being drawn to your content where you have
Mm,
this transparency is I want to make money off of this, but I don't want to be rich off of this. I want to bare minimum pay my bills. And the only reason I want to make money is just so I can keep doing it and get
right.
better at it.
Yeah.
But having that be a necessity, that fucks with me a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's, I have a lot of friends dating back my entire life. One of my best friends, the late Charlie Cooper from Telephone Tel Aviv, he used to wait tables. And he used to go on tour and play all around the world, and he at the time, they had a lot more fans than I did as musicians, and yeah, and, I was like, "Why are you waiting tables?" And he's like, "'Cause I love making music, and I don't wanna have to think about making me," and it really inspired me because for a long time I would make music for advertisements
Mm-hmm.
and television and stuff like that. And I would just see that as a service I'm providing. Like, okay, I have to work, I have to provide this service. I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to work on it this many hours a day. And then the rest of the time, then I afforded the freedom of not having to care what anybody thought about my music. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because, before that I was making a living from touring and releasing albums. But then it was like, okay, now I don't care anymore. And I could do whatever
Mm-hmm.
I want. If I want to have a different style of music that I think that my audience would normally possibly reject, I can go do that because I want to, and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
feel like doing. And it worked great. It grew tremendously, and people hear that, and they hear that sort of natural, organic inspiration, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the point of doing it. The point of doing it is because you want to. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, you're just telling me that you want to make a living and do what you want to do. And that's what everybody wants. Like and that's a
Exactly.
great
Yeah.
thing. Like that's how ideally, I think that's how we will become the most efficient versions of ourselves. Like
I
we will,
agree.
if everybody can get into that, and I'm not sure that that's very, that's not very possible, but if everybody could get into that mode, and if everybody sort of cradled that, then capitalism would be pretty rad and awesome, and there wouldn't be nearly as many problems with it because everybody
Right.
would just be working at their most efficient state. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was doing, I was in academia for a long time, which I like jokingly, half jokingly say was just an extension of my childhood.
hmm,
And, I wanted to become a professor, but, leading up to making the decision to go to college and really try to double down in that realm was, again, coming from a small town. I was encouraged by people to be a musician, but I didn't understand that there was actually like an avenue, because behind the musics and all of this stuff was all like, yeah, we were playing in a garage one day, and then all of a sudden this guy was like, you're the one, and that, and so
you got what it takes, kid.
yeah. And I think that that like mythology that's built around rock stardom, at least for kids growing up, and like I think we're similar age, like, growing up late 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
it was like this, just wait, it's going to happen, so I
Yeah.
wasn't like, I didn't realize the level of agency that it would have taken. So by the time, I
Sure.
was hitting college age, it was kind of like, well, I should probably have a backup plan. And I never stopped making music during this time, but yeah, I basically just burned myself out and ended up, I ended up becoming an electrician, and did
Hmm.
that for 5 years, and that just murdered my soul.
Really? Okay.
I hated it. Yeah, because it was just
Yeah.
construction. I was on these
Right.
job sites with these, working for these giant companies, and like total boys club. What, you don't like money, and being asked to
Yeah.
work ridiculous overtime all the time, and yeah, it just wasn't for me. So I've never really found a way to like have a job that doesn't murder my soul until just recently doing the podcast over the last few years. However, I think the pandemic, with
Mm.
the extra
Yeah.
unemployment, and then people's time, like I was like, oh shit, this is a good business model. And now as the economy is doing what it's doing and things have settled down from that, I'm starting to, it's like, oh, at this current rate, I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm going to have to
Yeah.
get another job if I don't change something. And that's, yeah, it's just really, it fucks with you, because art is also
It,
like a job where it doesn't matter how good it is or how much time you put in. That doesn't equate to,
right.
you know,
Yeah. It's interesting to look at things like that too, from like both. There really is two sides. There's a creative side, and then even from what you're describing me, it's like it's like, do I want to do I want to tackle this from the creative side, or do I want to tackle this from like the side of me that owns equity in a company, in a tech company, which is
yeah,
what I do, And
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like, right off the bat, I want to be like, well, yeah, but your TAM is too small, your total addressable market. There's not, how much can you grow inside the modular space, which is
absolutely.
already shrinking. If you look at the music trades reports,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, well, that's what you want to do, so that's what you should do. Yeah.
Yeah,
life.
it's real fun. So when does the transition into like getting into electronic music and like and music technology, synths and all that happen from guitar?
I think I was always like really well, my initial attraction to synthesizers was that I wouldn't need to have a band. Like I was just like I won't I could make music, but I don't need these douchebags like hanging around.
Yeah.
And, because just at the time, I think I was just so much more motivated than, like, the people I was jamming with, and it
Hmm.
was probably because I grew up, like as a kid, I was listening to jazz and, like, I was playing I was learning Joe Pass on the guitar and stuff like that, and so it was, like, a little bit more heady than, like, Nirvana or whatever was
Right.
happening on the
Yeah.
radio at the time, and, yeah, and so naturally then I had played drums enough to where I could play the drums better than the drummer, and I could
Hmm.
play the bass better than the man. I was just like, "Well, I'm just gonna get some synths
Yeah. Yeah.
or, some a DR660 drum machine, and that'll play, like, better than Buddy Rich can, and then I'll play with that." And then, and in that though, that was sort of the thing is because, like, the Boss DR660 drum machine was made to, make Queen beats, do,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
things like that, like rock beats, Beato beats. I don't know what you would call them, like just sort of like the rock pop music beats, and then I'm trying to like program Buddy Rich beats on them and stuff,
Hmm.
and I think that's when it sort of took this weird direction, um,
Yeah.
that kind of paved the way for the rest of things, where it was like a sort of the left field of synths and gear and electronic music. But also, with live instruments and or recorded instruments being part of it too. Um, Ultimately, though, it's just like lack of genre, and weirdly, that finds itself in electronic music a lot, just because people. That's where most of the innovation is happening, I suppose.
Hmm.
Not too many new styles of saxophones coming out these days. So,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have granular synths and all these other things.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I had a similar thing too. It was like, well, one, band practice is just like it's such a pain in the ass to get so like all these different people, especially as you become an adult, like
yeah,
on the same schedule to put. And then there's the question of like how the different levels of motivation and everything. So yeah, I went the route of guitar with APC and Ableton, and now it's guitar and modular and all this shit. But um,
yeah,
I was also curious, like just judging by your the way that you tackle the topics in your videos and your love for data. You mentioned that quite a bit.
yeah.
Do you have an academic background? Did you go to school? Do science? Like, were you a scientist at it or anything?
No, I dropped out of high school.
Oh, really?
I'm
Okay.
that's I think that's one of the things that's, like, so important to me is that at some point, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, I got hired to write a private paper that, wasn't, like, published publicly. It's for a patent, and then, rehired for a couple more, and then I ended up being hired by a couple other, companies or things like that, and at some point, I was just like, "Wait a minute, I'm a scientist. Like,
Hmm.
I'm literally a scientist. Like, what is a" and I remember Googling, like, "How to be a scientist. What does scientist mean?" And it was all scholarly, it's all like, you have to go to college and you have to it's
Hmm.
like, well, actually, no, you just have to be paid to research things. That's
Yeah.
I guess that's what means you're a professional scientist. And so sure enough, and then I kind of never wanted to say it because then I felt bad for anybody who did go to school for 8 years and was working as a research assistant, and then I'm
Hmm.
like, being paid to, like, head these things. And then I kinda thought to myself, well, the other end, like, I hate the word "cit science," I hate citizen science, I hate that word because if people are researching something, they're being scientists, whether it's
Hmm.
good or bad science, whether it's proper research or improper, um as long as you're trying to find truth, like actually trying to find truth, not
Right.
trying to confirm your own bias, but as long as you're
Right.
trying to find truth, you are a scientist.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, just like, wow, if I knew that when I was a kid, I probably would have like accomplished a lot more things. But
Oh,
I was
totally.
just, I just had this well, I'll never be a scientist because I can't go to college, and that was kind of
Yeah,
how I looked at it. But
that's
here I
interesting.
am.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Yeah.
fact. That's like a surprising answer because, being in academia for as long as I was, I studied primate evolution. So reading lots of papers, definitely learning how the scientific method works and how, stats work. And one thing that I took away from your videos was like, oh, I mean, he has a grasp on like what the scientific method is. Like, I feel like I think one of the biggest failures of America is our education system, and it just blows my mind. I was just talking with some friends last night about this, just how many people who are very smart people and adults in this world, they don't actually understand what the scientific method is, and
Oh yeah.
and how at the base of that is the philosophy of science. So like, yes, we get to this data that can be observed, but at the base of it all is the philosophical assumption that, well, yeah, we can make conclusions off of this, so
Right. Yeah.
which
I
is a pretty
mean,
strong assumption. I'm not saying that makes it flimsy, but
it's incredibly unhuman. Like from just how our brains work, it's so incredibly unhuman to be like, I think I have an idea. Wait a minute, I think I have an idea, and then spend the next 2 years trying to prove yourself wrong. Like
yep.
that is incredibly unhuman and just weird, and it doesn't make sense when you tell like. So right now, I'm working on this massive research project that is about allegedly. I'm still saying allegedly, even though this is like written everywhere in every other, but allegedly 2 to 3% of people hear a hum sound that sounds kind of like a rumbling truck outside or maybe a drone. And I've been interviewing people by this massive bank of data that I've been collecting for years, something like close to 8,000 people. And now I'm actually interviewing them on camera, and now I'm actually doing field research for this. And then in January next month, I embark on like, a 3.5 week, possibly even 4 week trip where I go, throughout the United States and parts of Mexico, interviewing people and trying to essentially, all I'm trying to do is put holes in my own theories. It's like, and everybody I talk to is just like, oh, so you think it's that, so you're going to try and prove it. And it's like, no, I think it's that, so I'm going to try and disprove it.
Yep.
Like, and then try and fund the whole thing through YouTube and Amazon Prime Video. Yeah. So
right. So, is there like a name for the phenomenon? Like you said, it's already been written about. Like
the hum, yeah. If you just
okay.
search for the hum on Wikipedia, that's what I've been linking everybody to. Just so yeah.
It sounds
so
like the reverse tinnitus or something. Like
yeah, I mean that is one of the leading. That is a pretty large theory. There's a professor or a doctor who came up with that theory, and who's done like more research than anybody else on this. And however, he hasn't done that much field research. Like he's only interviewed people, and he's only has, and so it's like, well, if all of your field research is, I guess I can't make air quotes on a podcast. If all of your field research is and I, by the way, it sounds like I'm like being pissy about this person. I'm not at all. Like he's brilliant. But if all of your field research is coming from people with bodies, then it's going to be hard to come to the conclusion that this is happening as, something that's not in your body. And so,
right. Well, isn't correct me if I'm wrong, but tinnitus has something to do with damaged, like the tiny like hair follicles in your ear or something like that. Is that? I feel like I've heard that.
Usually, I think, or where it's like the easiest way where you could trace it. Like if you're like, okay, well, I got tinnitus because I was a drummer because I worked with heavy machinery. It is caused from that, but it's also, I mean, when sound is like already really complicated when you think about how sound waves work and refract and reflect and all these weird things that they do and change frequencies, traveling at different speeds, and thinking about it that way where, you pretend that you're just like in this tank of water where air has this incredible force over pressure waves moving around. It's kind of crazy. But then psychoacoustic sound, like that side of it, where, okay, so now your brain picks up these vibrations, or sorry, your inner ear picks up these vibrations, and now your brain translates them into things that you can recognize, and then prioritizes them based on what you probably already know this, what you've evolved to receive as it. So like a screaming baby is absolutely going to take precedent over, a distant factory or a bird in the distance or something, because and that's why when people go out to eat and they hear a screaming baby, they can't handle it. But, hearing like the smooth jazz somehow doesn't seem to bother them.
Yeah. That's kind of like, that's referring to like the Fletcher Munson equal loudness contours. Have you heard? Yeah. So where for the listener at if you play every range of frequency that's audible to human hearing, at the same amplitude, there is a range that just sounds louder to us.
Yeah.
And, I think the theory is that it's around the screaming baby, the human's speaking voice, and also maybe the cat, the big jungle cat, making its scary noise in the background. And then you got stuff like binaural beats or whatever, where it's like if you play these two slightly different frequencies in stereo, your brain will just invent a new frequency that you hear. And if you take one earphone off, like that's okay, cool.
The
so like
tones, that's like another, that's other really odd one where it's just like, what? So you just create a third frequency from the high ones. There's so many audio phenomenon, and it's all just based on like your brain, at odds with how you think sound works.
Totally. Yeah. I actually teach, so that I went to I went through an apprenticeship to get my, electrical license, but because of my academic experience, I was like, well, if I'm going to try to get out of the field and try to do the podcast, like I'm going to need like supplemental income. So I've actually been teaching at that apprenticeship for like 3 or 4 years now. And one of the classes I teach is called sound distribution or sound reinforcement. And the first lesson, the first like night of class is all just talking about compression and rarefaction and, like different substrates and, how sound travels and everything. Where was I going with that? I don't remember, but that also is just like a really cool, like new way of thinking about being a musician as I became older.
It's I mean, it's like, well, I mean, not only that, but when you just, sound is just like a very specific type of pressure wave. And then when you think about all of the other waves everywhere, and then, when you get into the quantum level, then it's just like, oh dear, this reality of ours is very, very subjective to our species, or
it's our hearing apparatus. So I always,
every single thing that we it's very, very subjective to how we personally see it rather than how things really are.
Absolutely.
Mind-bending stuff, of course.
Yeah. And then you think about like different, like the cones and rods of your eye, and then like the mantis shrimp having so many more, and like, well, that eye sees the world a lot different. I always ask my students, like, you always hear like if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one around to hear it, does it still make a sound? And, I always like to ask people that question, and people are always like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, technically it still makes that change, like that change of air pressure still happens. But if there's no biological organism that has evolved some sort of thing like an ear to then take that physical energy and then convert it to an electrical signal that we then process,
Well, yeah, but not only that, but like if nobody observes the tree falling, then literally, according to our best understanding of how physics works, it didn't. It was in superposition until somebody could verify, until a conscious being could observe it having fallen or not fallen, or having fallen or not fallen. And that's that's where, I mean, that was like the hill that Einstein died on and was wrong. was that sort of allegedly Einstein used to have dinner parties and make fun of people that, coming up with like the quantum theories were still kind of young at the time, and he would make fun of them and say, "Oh, do you see the moon? It looks beautiful. We only see it because a mouse saw it, because a mouse observed it." And he would make jokes like that. But the crazy thing is, he was wrong. Like, he was dead wrong, and that was his. I mean, obviously, he was right about many things that are way above any of our understandings. But
right,
yeah, that was his. That was
well, then
the wrong hill to die on.
Yeah, it's also, you starting to think about this and these questions. It's kind of classic, like philosophy, 101 in college, where, like, well, did the tree fall? Well, what's falling? That's a construct that we made up. Yes, things can move through physical space and react to gravity, and they have their own properties. But like, we decide to say it fell, and it, I mean, just you can just start picking things apart and then you get at that basis that I was talking about at the bottom of science, which is, the philosophy of science. And you have to.
Well, and the philosophy of science was always that, I guess it would be like, okay, well, the tree grew as part of a chain reaction from the Big Bang. And so therefore the tree fell when the Big Bang happened. And we are just waiting for time to catch up, for space time to catch up with that until we see it. And so basically our death has already happened. It's already written out, but we can't control, if we're referring to time as the fourth dimension, we can't control where we are on this plane. We can't, I mean, we're always moving forward, but like we can't go back, obviously. And so the only way we could control it is if we were to like build a very fast plane, I suppose. So then we slow it down. But yeah. So it's like, then we approach these events, and that's up until quantum theory. That's what we believed. That's what we thought was the case. And it turns out that that's way more complicated than that. But yeah, this is hopefully this is on the deeper spectrum of the modular or podular modcast.
I mean, yeah, I've definitely over the it'll be 6 years in March I've been doing this. And so yeah, I've definitely ventured out of just modular and started, talking. Like I had the episode that I'm going to be editing and releasing this week after we're done here is actually with Jason Lytle from Grandaddy.
Oh, cool.
And, I've had like some guys from Tortoise and Deerhoof. So I'm starting to expand into, because not everybody I feel like modular artists and people are utilize modular. The variation in interests is pretty broad, but there are some like, I feel like, Tortoise is pretty modular music adjacent, a lot of modular people like Tortoise, so like and like you mentioned earlier, and it's something that I thought about earlier too, early on in the show of like, if I do want to grow this to be like my only income source, like the modular user base, like you said, my target market, for lack of a better word, is very limited. So yeah. But yeah, we'll go off.
So then I guess you can. This will be the one where we could break off into the Einstein versus Niels Bohr debates.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm getting a little bit out of my comfort zone with the physics side of things. Like I just doubled down on like, and I'm even out of practice. It's been over 10 years since I was studying this stuff, so I haven't really kept up on the latest in human evolution and whatnot, but still fascinated by it.
Yeah, that's totally fine. The synth tube space is probably equally as fascinating and contradictory as reality, as the fabric of our reality.
Well, that's something else that like kind of drew me into your videos and the way you approach it. Is I do gear demos and stuff on the show, and I work with modular companies to do that. But I don't want to just like for instance, one year I got the 4MS ensemble oscillator, to make a video and talk about it on the show. And just like within a day or two of getting it, there were already like a bunch of really great YouTube demos on it by people who have been doing demos longer than I am, or longer than I have. And I was like, am I just going to create another like demo? So I just made an absurd short film about it being like this weird device that finds weird items and stuff. So I've always been wanting to, like find an artistic or unique, approach that I feel like is me. But I have also found that the people who are in the audience for demo videos, that's confusing. And luckily the people who get it, and I love that, and I still do shit like that. But I enjoy doing the podcast. It's very rewarding. I don't have any like intention to stop doing it, but the podcast is not like my I'm passionate about it, but it's not my core passion as an artist, like I like to talk to artists. It's a lot of fun. I like to provide insight to these people that, to the audience who are fans of other people getting long form conversations. That's very meaningful to me. And the way that you generate revenue off of stuff like this is through advertising. And I've been contacted by like, your manscapes and that kind of thing, which I never really felt great about, but tried. And it was just, it just ended up like, I don't want to do that.
Did you do a Manscaped?
I did. And my audience is not the audience for Manscaped, and I'm not the person they want to buy it from. So
yeah,
it didn't perform to their liking. And, they had to meet an X amount for blah, 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 or whatever. So, but honestly, I'm really glad it worked out, because I talked to a lot of people and put myself through a lot of turmoil being like, do I really want to like bring fucking pubic hair into the podcast,
yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, well, this is how these things make money, and I want to make money. And it's a real, so I guess
I was offered a lot of money from them and researched the product just out of curiosity. And sure enough, there's a lot of cut up balls.
Oh, really?
It turns out that they're not.
It's not
I
what
was
they're
just
advertising.
Like, wow, maybe it got better since I looked, but I was just like, oh man, yeah, there was a lot
That's
of
hilarious.
Yeah,
I never felt good about it. The only one that I ever like and would still consider working with after doing some research just to make sure they are what they say they are is something like BetterHelp. But other than that, I have decided, like I'm sticking with synth companies, and modular companies are oftentimes one or two people. I've made a lot of friends with these people, and their success is important to me because I love them as people. And I don't do reviews at all. I just do like, mostly, like I said, I like to make like weird videos and just
features.
Basically like features. Yeah. Like, hey, this is how I'm using it. If you like it, go buy it. So I don't feel super grimy about that. But the shitty thing is like, it's like inconsistent, and I hate that I have to like, cause I don't have a business mind. I'm not good at it. And it's really hard, but at the same time, it's not as bad as being a construction worker. So it's just trying to reconcile all of this and the mental jujitsu involved to make yourself not, like, I don't want to be a bad, unethical person, and I don't think I have, but,
I mean, I think that's a lot of it too. Is like I fly this flag a lot, and I'm very. I spent a very, very long period of time being incredibly selfish, just making music and playing gigs and making music and playing gigs and making music about me and releasing it to the world, and then having people praise me for it, and then making music about me. And all that time, I was trying to balance that because I just felt like a piece of shit. Like I was just not serving the world anything but melodies. And that's just, I didn't feel like I felt like I was always floating. I had this imposter syndrome where I'm just floating on this thing. And that was releasing music as the flashbulb, right? And so in like 2011, I started a nonprofit music school. And I had more money than I needed to pay my rent at the time. And so I dumped it all into this thing. And I just kept doing that over and over again. And now I feel like I'm finally I'm figuring out a way to like find that balance in a way where, the money can keep going up, but also the spending that money on things that actually matter can keep going up with it.
Yeah. That's, I wanted my pie in the sky dream is if the podcast were to, or whatever I'm doing as an artist, were to make it to where the bills were covered and there was the extra income, like I would immediately start my own synth library here in Tacoma, like a learning space to have workshops, and for people who can't afford to buy synths, they can check stuff out, like the synth library in Portland, where they could come in and use that space and just like, and providing service to the world, and not because I had a similar thing, not that I was making money off of it, but just being like a singer, songwriter, guitarist in a pop punk band. Yeah, it really starts to feel very, very like it's just so centered on me, and that's what
let's say you made that synth library, and let's say you ran into I'm not volunteering, but let's say you ran into somebody who was like, hey, I've rented, you're going to need insurance, you're going to need a space, you're going to need a bunch of legal documents to like open this up, you're going to have to register it as a business with the city, with the state, all this stuff, and you're going to need a little more money to make all that happen. I'll give you $1 million for the next 5 years, and you give me 20% of the income that you make off of this, and I'll guide you on how to make that income. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I own this much of the company, and I want that money back by the state, and maybe some coupon deals or something like that. Now you've made this happen. You've grown it. You might be able to open another synth library in Seattle, and you've committed to capitalism.
Yep, exactly.
You've gotten a VC. Yep.
Yeah,
that's the absurdity of it all.
Mm-hmm. And that's all. Like I've been just so ignorant to how that part of the world works for so long, and I feel like over the last couple of years, that veil is being pulled back, and I'm starting to just see like, oh, there's like no, there's like, there's no like 100% ethical. No one gets hurt. This is a great thing for everybody, and I'm doing nothing but service. It's
always a spectrum. That's a thing. It's like and I mean, and there's even that sort of that ridiculous absurdity that every person on like every hardcore capitalist points out, where like somebody bitches about capitalism while using an iPhone, and they're like, well, you're using your iPhone to bitch. Right. And it's like there's that that's still an absurdity, but it's not an absurdity on the character doing it. It's an absurdity on the system that we have, where you can't actually express yourself without committing a capitalism. I guess to like make it clear,
a capital.
Anybody who often in one of my videos, I said that I was a libertarian, and I still hear about that constantly. People say he's a scumbag libertarian, and I feel like nobody actually searched libertarian. They only thought of like Joe Rogan or Elon Musk or something. They didn't think of like egalitarian libertarianism or like leftist libertarian. I just think human rights are the most important thing in the world, and then everything else, the human rights, science, and then everything else can like take a backseat to that. That's libertarianism.
Yeah, I feel like that has definitely become a 4-letter word over the last couple of years, more so than it would have been before. It's been
it's amazing how many people have like explained to me that I am not a libertarian, because they understand a libertarian to be this. And it's like, I'm not, like, this is the weirdest parasocial back and forth ever. Like, I'm
Yeah.
telling you what I believe, and I'm linking you to a definition of what that is. Yet you're still like, it's Elon Musk who's wrong about being a libertarian. Like, he's the one who like doesn't think that people should be allowed to live here if they're immigrants,
right?
Or he's the one who doesn't believe that like trans people have human rights.
Right.
He's not a libertarian. He's just an asshole who says that because it's not cool to say you're a Republican.
Totally. So, yeah. I was when you started this whole topic of the libertarian thing, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, they're the first people to pop to mind, and I think that's why, and that makes sense. They have a lot of people's ears, and they have a lot of
believe in human
and
rights up until the gun part ends, and then
everybody
should be allowed to own guns and companies, and other than that.
So, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We're closing in on an hour, but I guess in summation,
I got a bit more. Let's go. Rapid fire. No.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was racking my brain for like looking for like actual insightful questions, because not only am I fascinated by what you do and how you approach it, but I also like am I'm trying to learn from. I see what you're doing, and I'm like, this feels more like the direction that I would want to go as far as like the transparency and just not making it clear that like I'm not trying to be a shill. And if I'm telling you about something that that I think is good, I'm doing that because I like it, and I think you may like it too. And that's kind of where it ends there. And if I can not be an electrician for doing that, I feel okay about that. But it's just, I feel like I look at your channel, Red Means Recording, and I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I could get my YouTube channel to that size. But then I know what you go through, and I know like the emotional, social cost that comes with that. And I don't know if I have the mental fortitude to gracefully traverse that path,
I have very thick skin. And I think it's just because in one way, shape, or form, I think from the age of like 20 and onward, and now I'm 44, I was a public figure. And so I've always had somebody out there calling me a name, or, giving me some sort of like very unhinged criticism. And I don't think that having thick skin's good. I don't think that's like healthy. You're not supposed to be like able to just take, an unlimited amount of abuse from the world, like, and from others. Like you shouldn't have to deal with that. Like nobody should. And so I very much understand other YouTubers. I mean, a lot of YouTubers and a lot of people in any sort of public social media space, they legitimately just kind of have breakdowns. Like they just lose it. Like they just can't, they get so disconnected from what is and what isn't, if that makes any sense. Because I both of us probably deal with this. Oftentimes, one negative person will have 8 accounts, and they'll go to great lengths to tell you like so much isn't real. And that's why I still go to NAMM, and that's why I still go to KnobCon and stuff like that, because even though they're like, like there's so many things that are unpleasant about being in those environments, but now I even speak at NAMM I'm speaking this year at the main stage with an economist, because I think it's so important to look people in the eyes and like
I agree with that.
And I recommend you do it too if you can. Like I think that it's really important to go to a lot of these events, because you also meet people. I mean, well, you meet a lot of people on your podcast, obviously, but you also just meet people in real life, and you get to see them. At the last NAMM, I met Weaver Beats, if you're familiar with his channel.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
He kind of plays a troll character a little bit.
Okay.
He's like kind of the, I don't know, he reports like news on the audio gear space, and also is kind of like the young, cool guy who makes fun of all the other synth fluents. And he gets a lot of hate from other synth fluents as a result of that. But I got to meet him in person, which was like, that's so valuable. Like to just be like, this is a socially awkward dude who is at his first NAM and he's a nice guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, and then anything, he's never rubbed me the wrong way after that, because it's just like, yeah, I feel like it's so important.
Because you got the
And
context. Yeah, and you don't have the veil of this, like, because like the parasocial relationships, and then just the nature of human interaction online.
Yeah.
It's unnatural, because all of the natural cues for this is successful, or this is, maybe don't talk to this person like this, or like those are gone.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's like the consequence, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Sometimes I think because there is no like consequence of, I guess, to just be blunt about it. There's no consequence of getting like smacked, right? Like if you talk shit somebody online straight to them, you're not, a left hook's not going to be coming to your head. And so maybe that's like the basis of it. It's a lot more complicated than that. But
I totally agree. Yeah.
But that's probably why people are so much more critical to me online than they are when I'm 6'2" standing in front of them.
Right. Yeah.
With like a long history of being a boxer. It's probably like, it's a little safer. So it makes me wonder, does it like, when we get yelled at by people online, is that just what it's like to be a woman all the time? Like being yelled at by like angry white dudes? Like,
I haven't heard that perspective, but goddamn if it doesn't like make sense.
Because they're not worried about getting a hook in the face,
Uh-huh.
They're not worried that they're less likely, the person yelling at a woman in real life is less likely to be worried about, getting fired from that person, or that person in a position of power above them.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty daunting.
Yeah.
Not to be too woke, but it makes me like, but when I am like, I can at least shut the computer off, and most people won't treat me terribly but like, Jesus Christ, if I was a tiny person, or if I was, God, like getting that bullying without being able to shut it off would probably break me.
Yeah. Well, and then, like you said, it's so complicated. There's so many factors. And I think another factor is, say somebody was bullied by a 6'2" guy who has the same phenotypic expression that you do. And now that consequence of the right hook being gone, they can use you as their verbal punching bag. It's just, it's, and then everything beyond, in between what we were just talking about, we don't know what, like, it's but you can logic your way out of this, but there's that deeper feeling, like, that all this hate are the people who are haters are the loudest ones, and 90% of the people who love what you do, you never hear from them. That.
Oh, you hear from them, but you just don't read it.
Right.
It doesn't, you'll skip over those comments and only read the critical ones. Like, for some reason, we're just self-loathing that way.
I know.
There's, in some of the comments, and I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but some of those comments, you read them, and it's so easy to like read between the lines of what you were talking about the person bullying them who has a similarity in likeness or something. Mm-hmm. And I get to the end of it, and like, the goal is to make me mad, and I want to hug them. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like there's so much going on there. Because I think that was one of my first realizations, was to make me feel better about any sort of like bad drama going on with like YouTube comments or something, was imagine myself writing that comment and what my surroundings would be like. Like, for me to just tell somebody that they look terrible, or to tell somebody that like everything they say is makes you sick, whatever it is.
Some of that stuff you were showing in the video, the not wanting to do reviews, like some of that was like, it was dark, and like not threats, or wishes for your non-existence.
Like where do you have to be in life to type those words out to somebody, knowing that they'll read it about themselves? Like, because I certainly, I didn't read that and then like contemplate suicide. You know, I
Right,
read it and I
right.
was just like, man, this person's like deeply fucked up,
Yeah.
and it's
And in
really,
pain. Yeah.
yeah, and I hate that part because like in the YouTube, in this general world, that is very rare. I feel like a lot of creators don't feel that at all, even about fellow YouTubers. I feel like there is a massive lack of communication between a lot of YouTubers, and they see each other as competition, and they don't see YouTube as what it really is. Like in
Hmm.
our function, it's this springboard to grow our audience, to make money off of our audience, or to have our audience support us. Well, it really is to make money off of it. In my case, it's like join my Patreon and I will then keep growing my platform of making films or doing research or whatever it is that I'm doing. And YouTube is a very, very shitty company that in this stage helps me get to that. Just like
Hmm.
Spotify, like, you know, the
Hmm.
algorithm recommends people, you know, people
Hmm.
discover your music, but the ultimate goal should be to get people off of Spotify because
Yeah.
Spotify won't pay you well, you know,
Right.
or anything according to these new royalty things.
It's
Um,
wild. Yeah.
yeah. So like the ultimate goal would be, yeah, if you see my name anywhere on Spotify and then you Google it, even if you Google the flashbulb, my YouTube channel will show up. And now you
Hmm.
can get off that platform. You can get somewhere to where you can link to my Patreon because you can't link off of Spotify. Like that's how we all should be looking at it, and we all should be. Um, I mean, when a company offers me money for something or a sponsor or something like that, I'm always transparently sharing that with other creators who get paid for, you know, who take sponsor money. Um, and as I did, I don't hold myself above people who take sponsor money. It's just that now sponsors don't really want to work with me because I'm a nonprofit and it's going to get published in my
Hmm.
taxes, and they don't want to be seen as, you know. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, so I mean, it's really important though because if I tell you how much a company's offering me, then you know to ask for that much,
That
you
was
know,
the
and so
video I was
collective bargaining.
watching actually
Yeah,
when we right before we started, and I thought that was really cool that you were breaking it down because that's something that I've almost wanted. Like I wonder sometimes if my audience, if I've given them the wrong impression that I'm very fortunate. I do get sent gear,
yeah,
and that's awesome. I don't have to buy modules. I can't afford to buy modules, but
of
that's
course,
the
yeah,
I mean, um, but I I do not make my wife is pulling the weight, you know, and that
yeah,
weight's getting heavy, and it might have to switch. So like yeah, but I'm so bad at I don't like ask like every time I record a spot for like, hey, go over to the Patreon, like I don't feel, it feels weird to me. It doesn't, I don't know. I'm bad at it, and but I depend on it, and I'm it's just been such a weird thing to try to reconcile.
it sort of comes back to where this started. Like it comes down to bias. And if a company, I have a friend, for example, and a company that I'm friends with paid that friend to make a video, and
Mhm.
he's a popular YouTuber, paid him to make a video, and he gave it a bad review, and the company was like, "Well, what the hell?" And I was like, "Yeah, guess what, genius? You can't
Yeah,
take money to make to make a video and then shit on the product.
yeah,
You can't do it. You have to choose one or the other. And you can obviously, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but like the company's never going to work with you ever again in any capacity if you do that, because like there is a sort of unwritten contract that
mhm,
if you're taking a few grand to make a video about something and you're getting the product for free, you're not allowed to shit on that product. Like that's sort of the handshake that's going on
right,
there, whether you
yeah,
want to honor it or not. And at the same time, when it comes to just free gear, I get tons of it, and I get more than I would ever use to make music. Like I don't use that much gear to make music. And so, however, when I buy something, when I go to Perfect Circuit and play around, and when I decide that I like a piece of gear the most, and I take my credit card out or my debit card out and I pay for it, and then I look at my bank account go down because I made that decision, now I have a way stronger bias than if somebody just sent me something for free. Like now
That is
I
such a
am
good point. Holy shit. Yeah. That's
like
a
that.
great point.
It is a huge difference. And it's so hard to make that in like a sentence, to make that point in a sentence. To
Well,
be
especially
like,
if you're
what
not,
you should,
yeah.
right. What you should be looking out for is the shit that I paid for, because that is where my brain is hacked with confirmation bias, because I have to criticize myself to, just like everybody who buys Behringer products and then hears that the company's shitty, they feel attacked because they made a decision and I'm attacking that decision when they first hear that me attack Uli Behringer or the company's practices. And I feel like that's a tragedy, because it's like, no, you just want to make music. You have
it's a bit of a
nothing to
false
do with all of this
equivalency,
bad shit. But like now it's pinned on you, and you have this logo in every photo you take of your gear and every time you make music, and like those people are the actual victims to this I guess scenario of a company having terrible behavior. It's certainly not me. I'm not a victim. I've made money off of videos criticizing Behringer. I've gotten tons of followers off of videos criticizing Behringer. Like, no, it's my payday. Like it's, yeah, I mean, but it's important to recognize that.
Yeah. And it's like, it sucks that like the web and intricacies of a capitalist society, that has such an influence on worldview and self-image within somebody's own head, to where they would take you talking about a company, and then putting that on themselves, and then that's what causes the defensiveness, because you're right, they are at odds with that decision that they made.
You're mad at Behringer? I bought Behringer. I am Behringer.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate you. It's like, what is happening right now? This is so much. Yeah. It's like it's really bonkers, but I get it, because like I just got new studio monitors for the first time in like 15 years. And I'd been rebuying these cheap Yamaha HS8s forever. And it's because I liked it. And I thought to myself, like, how much of that is confirmation bias and not because I like the way they sound? Like, and I got new ones and it's fine and they sound great and I love them. And like, it's like, Jesus, I think that was actually confirmation bias. I think it's because so many people told me to upgrade my monitors and I said, no, these are fine. I paid for them with my own money. I got, and then I did that for 15 years and then finally, got over it and realized that it's goofy. Yeah. So, I mean, the point of the moral of the story here is that like, if you should be more worried about what a creator spends their own money on than what they're getting for free, because something I got for free, I don't sell anything I've gotten for free. And unfortunately, I've not allowed myself to do that yet. I feel like I'm going to get busted. I feel like they're going to be like, hey, do you still have this? We want it back. And I'm going to be like, no, oh God.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't, so they are truly often very low value for me, whereas something that I spent, my own money on, that requires a lot of confirmation bias. So yeah, those are the things I'm a shill for, are the ones that I've already decided I wanted and I want to double down on with money.
I also think it's really, it's just curious to me. And this, I think, there's maybe a bias might not be the word, but I always use the term mental jujitsu, but this could be a way of people in our position turning this around. But I feel like the vitriol that's towards something like, well, you got paid to do this. It's like, that is everything in our, like, do you wear band t-shirts? Do you have branded clothing? Like, that's how our world works. That's like, you don't like it, then Rage Against the Machine. And I'm not talking about the band. Like, I don't know, but
are you also following this whole like YouTuber plagiarism thing going on right now? The big.
I heard some about this, like on like like Hassan Piker maybe talking about it at some point recently, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. What is it?
Yeah, there's just like a big H-bomber guy had a big 4-hour long video destroying some other YouTubers for plagiarism, and I don't feel that great about it. I think it's kind of gross because I think that and like I said, as a self-identified libertarian, for a bunch of people who claim to be socialists, they sure do destroy each other instead of thinking about the overall system that, created a
Yes.
platform that not only allows plagiarism, but encourages it through its financial incentive and its lack of restriction.
Yeah.
Like,
And it seems
maybe that's the solution. Maybe not just destroying everybody who's not you, every creator who's not you. Because everybody's plagiarizing in one way or another. And if
right.
they have an easier route to get paid, then they're gonna take it because that's just how it works. And
I that's something I've also been really thinking about a lot lately, is just noticing how sometimes decisions and actions of people don't really align with this supposed philosophy that they may claim is the only way to be. The whole Spotify Wrapped thing, like my Instagram feed until the end of the year is fuck Spotify, fuck Spotify, fuck Spotify. And then at the end of the year, it's everybody, especially artists on Spotify, being like, look how many people listen to me on Spotify. You know, and it's like,
I always Photoshop mine to show how much less I was paid than the year before. Like, that's always really important to me. It's like, here's how big I am, here's how awesome I am, and here's how little of your money is going to me. Please stop using this fucking platform and pirate my music. Like, just do that and like be a patron or shake my hand or something. Like, because this is absurd and I don't want it to exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man,
yeah. How many people? And Ben, you got to get your music off Spotify if they're doing this, and then they subscribe to it, which is like, I'm not giving Spotify a dime. You are. Like, that's sort of unfortunately where we're at right now. And but again, I understand it. It's like it was designed by that. It's called choke point capitalism for a reason. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't exit that platform because it is embedded in every part of your life. Yeah, and us asking our listeners to not use Spotify anymore is asking them to completely reroute the way that they listen to music, which is delusional. Like, nobody's actually going to do it. So
yeah. Again, you have to you have to get the root. If you want to take bamboo out of your yard, you have to. No, never mind. I lost that one. I like to give the last couple minutes to the guests to scream whatever they'd like. I feel like we've both been screaming a lot from the modular mountaintops, but is there anything you would like to scream from?
Wow, a PR moment. Yeah, I never say anything in these, and I always feel like I should. So
it doesn't have to be PR. It can be whatever it could be a proclamation.
Or like the moment where you promote the reason why, because I never have a reason why I go. I'm just like, I'll go on your podcast. Like, I'm never like, most people go because they're on like a tour, a book tour, or an album release or something. So I'll think of some stuff on the spot. VoiceSwap.ai. We have created a platform that is literally changing. I feel like I missed the button with Spotify. I feel like I just missed it, and everybody got like, I just could have maybe been more proactive about it with my outspoken bitchy self, and I wasn't. And now I'm seeing AI coming for artists' rights and jobs and all these things in terms of just scraping their data and reselling it. VoiceSwap.ai is a company that DJ Fresh started, and drum and bass legend DJ Fresh. And we have this great team of people who are trying to preserve artist rights and trying to create an economy that actually makes sense by paying people for their content when it's being reused, and then using technology to innovate in that regards, and also even doing things like lobbying with Senate to try and get bills passed to make it illegal for people to just steal your voice and then profit off of it without paying you anything. So that is that's something that is taking up a lot of my time. And then also, I guess, if if you hear the hum, you're going to want to watch that documentary that comes out in however long away from now. But yeah.
Right on. Well, shit, man. I feel like I'd love to have you back on when you're ready to reveal the findings of the documentary and then promote it. Also, I feel like we could do a whole episode on the AI company. Like that sounds amazing.
I could have Dan DJ Fresh come on if you like.
I'd love that.
More
yeah,
than happy to. Yeah,
this is stuff I want to learn more about. Like, I've invested so much in learning things that are just like fascinating to me that aren't really applicable. But this is stuff that I feel like is applicable to what I'm most passionate about, and I should get my ass in gear.
We have the The Economist from SoundCloud. We have we have some. It's kind of funny to talk about capitalism and then like see all of these like brilliant capitalists now working for artists. Like
that's good really to hear, because you don't hear about that, and I've been wondering like where are the benevolent billionaires at? You know, like you'd think you'd get one, but
we don't have any billionaires, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just like the alliteration.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sure. No, yeah, it's I mean, but that's the whole point is like everything in tech has been removing value from music to subsidize by subsidizing it with venture capital, and this is trying to restore it and create an actual economy that works. So
cool. Well, I will throw links to all of that in the show description. Thank you so much for your time. It was awesome to hang and meet you.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Have a wonderful, I guess, afternoon. Yeah.
All right. That is our show. Thank you so much to Ben for coming on, and thank you for listening. Thank you to For a Mess, Novation, After Later Audio, and Patchworks for their continued support of Podular Modcast. If you would like to support Podular Modcast, head over to patreon.com/Podular Modcast or to podularmodcast.com. There's a pretty cool merch store there with a bunch of good stuff. I haven't added any new products for a while. I kind of forgot about it. So if you guys buy some stuff from there, I won't forget about it, and that will keep me. What kind of like nobody wants a podcast shirt though, right? Like I'm trying to think of some cool merch ideas that'll actually like serve a function and be useful. Anyways, that's a rant for another time. This week's secret word is Tim, get it together. Until next week.